Jacob Posel is a real person. He's not AI, or if he is, he's the best AI avatar I've ever seen. There's been debate about this on Twitter, but at DTC Jacob from Common Thread Collective is here to talk about AI. This is going to be a great episode. If you are like me and you are trying to figure out how to leverage AI in your ad account, you need to listen to this. Jacob is probably one of the three most interesting minds on this problem, maybe the most interesting mind in the e-commerce space, because he is building out AI-based ad creative tools for Common Thread Collective as a senior software engineer there. That is what his job is to do. So he's thinking about how to use AI to build ad creative all the time, and therefore it's just way farther than I am and then most people are on solving this problem and thinking about what it really is capable of doing. Before I say anything more about that, let's just jump into it so that we can get Jacob talking more and me talking less.
What's up? Thank you. I mean, I don't know if I would call myself the top 3 most interesting person in AI, but I mean, I love it. I work on it all the time, and I love talking about it. So I'm happy to be here.
I'll tell you why I would call you that. It's because there are probably, of course, people at very large companies doing this in other places and all of that. Like, I get that, right? Like that. It sounds, but you sit at a unique intersection, which is this combination of spending all your time building these AI tools with CTC, which means that in our space, for the kind of person listening to this episode, you are uniquely interacting with brands and with how to leverage these tools for brands, because CTC has made the investment to say we're going to put a full-time person on internally creating tools that we can use to leverage AI. It's like they're making a real bet on this, and they're involving you in doing it. So give people a really so anyway, yeah. There's a lot of people working on AI, but I don't know anybody else who's working on AI for brands in the way that you are, and therefore it's a really interesting thing. Give people a little bit of background so that we can know just like how you got here and how you got doing this. You're in Indiana right now, but you don't have an Indiana accent. So tell people just like a little bit of the Jacob Posel story, and then that way we can understand a little bit more of where you're coming from and why you started working on this.
Yeah. So, I mean, my background, I'm actually South African who moved to Australia and grew up in Australia. I then ended up in Indiana, of all places, in the US, and I studied. I did a master's degree in data science at IU in Indiana, and that's where I got a very traditional background in machine learning and applied statistics, and AI kind of in its infancy. After doing that, I had a very good foundational knowledge of machine learning and AI, but this was before the GPT-4 wave, ChatGPT came out. So I was working as a software engineer at a company called Airhouse, which is a fulfillment 4PL startup. That's how I got my first kind of start in e-com. I was on the fulfillment, logistics, supply chain, inventory side, and that might still be where some of my heart lies. But that will be a future thing. But then the AI wave began, and I kind of jumped on it straight away because of my background and because I found it incredibly interesting. And then kind of since then, I've gone all in on AI and e-com in my career. I've built things from like supply chain tracking systems and AI to creative strategy. And that's how I ended up at CTC. I met with Taylor through the Twitter universe, and now I'm full-time there building, honestly, some really, really cool AI tools for them.
Okay, so thank you. That's very helpful to give people a sense of where you're coming from. So this conversation started because I released an episode about a month ago. I'll put it in the show notes about sort of where I'm at with AI, and what I said was, in so many words, that I'm not sure that AI yet can like generate, because I believe messaging is the core driver of value creation for ads. I'm not sure AI yet can create great messaging. Like a lot of people, I've sort of experienced this weird, like it's 80% of the way thing 80% of the way there thing, where I'm going like, I want it to be able to, read a bunch of customer reviews and then spit out for me the ad that excellently communicates what customers are saying to more customers. But like once the tools that I've used actually get to that level of trying to spit it out, it just is like, not quite there. And then by the time I've actually done all that work, I maybe would have had more time. I maybe like didn't actually save any time. Now, in the midst of that, another thing I said there is that I felt actually sheepish recording the episode. I wanted to do it sort of as a live journal entry almost of like where I'm at with it, because I think a lot of people are in this place of trying to figure out, like we all see the potential, but we can't quite figure out, how to really leverage it all the way. And then the other big point I made, I think that is significant to me, is that I'm actually a little nervous about the way that AI cuts off the mental work involved at points with generating good ad creative. Like the comparison I made there is like, it's sort of like having a math textbook when you are a kid and you have the answers in the back of the book, and the point is not actually the right answer. The point is to show your work. And I think the showing your work thing is how you learn to do math, right? It's that you have to figure out how to go from the problem to the solution, and get the right answers. And so for me, what I found is that while AI was actually really useful in some ways by enforcing me to get really clear about what I did, and I'm thinking about other ways to use it to help me clarify my own thinking on things, when I would try to go from sort of value proposition to ad, it cut off the sort of mental churning of those middle steps. And the mental churning is actually really valuable, I think, that actually spending that time on it. So those are like my big reflections on it. I'm not abandoning it at all. I'm still trying to think through how to do it. You responded. You said you basically in some ways agreed with a lot of that. But I don't know. There's a few things I just threw out there. Which of those jumped out to you the most? What do I have the most wrong, and what am I not thinking about correctly? That's I guess one way to do it. And I won't even say about wrong or right. Give me your reaction to that basic take on AI.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about those points kind of in order. So, I mean, the experience that you're having is not unique to you, and I think it's probably the experience that most people are having with AI right now. And it's because of the limitations in which it's used. So, like the actual methodology they're using to integrate AI into their workflows, and also the tools that they have available to them. So, let's take your review example. So, for example, yeah, I think you're right. I think that I'm not sure with the exact methodology that you're using, but I'm assuming you're doing some kind of getting the reviews from like your review source, copying them, pasting them into Claude, ChatGPT, one of those chatbots, and then asking for insights or value propositions or copy for your ads based on those reviews. And that's probably all you could do right now with ChatGPT, for example, with a chatbot. And that's a fine way to do it. But I think everyone can agree that that's not going to get you the results that you need. So something there which immediately jumps out to me is that's not the best way to use AI right now. So let's talk about a methodology that AI is really good at to get the best results. So you may have seen that OpenAI recently released their O1 model, which was a change to the GPT-4, those O models. And it introduced something called chain of thought reasoning directly embedded into the models. And what it showed, which people have assumed for a while now, but this kind of quantitatively showed it, is that if you introduce chain of thought reasoning into LLMs or into AI, it produces far better results. So what that means is that when you're doing something like review scraping and copy generation or concept generation, you have to structure it in steps that let the AI think, that gives it a foundation to think through, and that gets the best results. So for example, at CTC, we do something similar to this, but instead of just copying all reviews and then pasting it in which the AI, if it's doing this, it's only going to get a summary of the reviews rather than very specific things. We actually go through every single review under a certain like rating and positive reviews and stuff like that. And we will look at the very specific reason why someone is making the purchase in a psychological framework within that review, and we'll also create a persona for who is the reviewer in that review, and we'll do that across all of the reviews, and then we'll feed it into another step in the process which is analyzing the reasons people are buying things and what they're buying and who they are and everything like that. So that's like another step in this chain of thought that we're going through. And then it will kind of churn through these concepts. And then the next step, once we've got the concepts, is now to then go into creating copy or whatever like that. So you can see how we're able to get a lot more detailed because we're not using the chatbot, we're using the API. And you break it out into these foundational chain steps, which actually end up producing a lot better, more usable results.
Okay, so how do I do that? I mean, yeah, how do I do that?
I mean, it's okay. It's going to be specific to you, so you might not think about concept generation the same way that CTC does, for example. So you're going to have a framework in your head or a framework that you use to do this manually, and it starts by defining that framework, breaking it down into steps, and seeing where the reviews start in that process. And then, unfortunately, the answer which people won't like is you need someone who knows how to code, who understands how to use an API, and who understands how to manipulate data to create that system and that function for you to scrape all of that and put into a database. So that's where you need to get to an extra step to be able to get the full use out of it.
And that's, I mean, just a detour for a second, that's what you are doing at CTC, right? Is like, among other things, presumably, is sort of because of your ability to actually be basically because you're a software engineer and you could think through sort of some of those more technical details of it. You're able to leverage the tool much better than I could. How long do you think you are necessary for that? I mean, this is just obviously a guess, but essentially, the truth is, right, like what many brands should be thinking as they hear this is that I want to go work with CTC so I can get that for myself, because you're building that for them. But of course, most of us, this is the reason I'm asking, most of us cannot employ a full-time software engineer to go out to that layer. So, how long do you think we are going to be in a world where that is required to leverage the tool that way?
Well, I mean, two things. So first of all, that is one piece of what I'm building at CTC, but the reason why they need a full-time software engineer is a lot more than that individual thing, that workflow. CTC has, we were talking about this before, Taylor doesn't go 0 to 1, he goes 0 to 100, and we're building the 100 right now. So that's kind of why they required full-time there. So I don't think that people should dismiss that. I don't think that, I think that they would be able to get help from a specialist for certain things. But how long will they need me in that? It's a good question. It's kind of impossible to tell. So I think about that in two ways. I would say that there's two important elements that I think that I bring to the table that allow me to provide value to a brand or agency, for example, which is that I think I understand e-commerce and I understand the data structure and I understand the intended output. And then I also understand the technology. And so I can bring those together. It just gets to a point where is the base model, like, is there going to be a GPT-5 that just understands that intersection so much better than I do? And maybe that's the case. And maybe at that point, then you can get far more without someone like me. But people are slow to adopt technology. And like, I'm sure you know.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Of all the brand owners, how many of them have the time to sit down and install and adopt a new technology, even if it's great, even if it's amazing? I think that there's like a bit of inertia in businesses where they're unable to adopt new things really quickly. And so I think that there's still value there. But I mean, the people who are like really on it and the people who are willing to innovate, I think that they will find a huge amount of value very quickly even without an expert software engineer.
Yeah, it requires a kind of cost investment that you represent for CTC that actually plenty of people could do. They just, I think, are probably either thinking they have to do it themselves or they're not thinking about that potential way to deploy capital in the business. Like they just are not thinking about the idea that, and I think, I mean, you're hard to find. Like, we were joking about this a minute ago, but you posted this thread about essentially like arbitraging Australian gambling like DFS, I think it was, or something like that, right? Anyway, like, or whatever it was, like essentially daily lines, like from different bookmakers, and how you got banned from gambling in Australia for it. Like, that's a pretty clever problem solving mind that is also mathy enough to get there, and that I think is not easy to replicate. And this is so much of the question for me about this is like, what is the actual applicability of the tool at this point to me versus to CTC? Because I mean, it certainly, like, you know, I have 5 clients. I'm not trying to make it a lot bigger. Like, I'm not going to go try to find you and put it in the business. I'm just not. I'm trying to figure out what is the way that I could use the tool now to do that. So that's I think is the challenge, and that's part why I'm asking how long it will take. Like, now, obviously you don't know the answer. I recognize that, but yeah. Let's go backwards a little bit and talk about something that I think is helpful here, that I have thought AI has been useful for, like sorry, did you call it chain of logic reasoning, or
chain of thought?
Chain of thought reasoning. Okay, great. Right. And even a second ago, you talked about, like, okay, if you wanted one of these tools to generate output conceptually in a certain way, one of the things that I would have to do is to get really clear about what I'm asking it to do. And this is like one of the other things I've found with prompt engineering, is that, like, it's really hard to express some of these ideas clearly. And I actually talked about this in the last episode I did too, that I like this about working with these tools, actually, is that it really makes the rubber meet the road on, like, it forces me to go, like, what am I actually trying to, when I write a hook, like, how clear can I get about what makes a good hook? Because my sense is, and tell me if you think this is right, the clearer I can get on what makes a good hook, the better the tool can be leveraged to reproduce it.
Yeah. I mean, that's right. That's absolutely correct. But there's a line you have to balance there. I mean, and it's the same way that you should think about an employee or someone who you work with. It's like, yeah, you could get as specific as possible to tell them how to do their job, and you can turn someone into someone that's exactly like you. But maybe you want to introduce a little bit of randomness and a little bit of flexibility there. And it's something that I think about too when I'm doing stuff like this. It's like, do I only want to do it in one specific framework with one specific type of output, which would give me, you're correct, it will give me a lot more reliable outputs in a certain structure. But I also recommend that people are doing that to sometimes introduce a little bit of flexibility and see what the results are, because sometimes the AI is genuinely creative and will surprise you in how good the results are.
I just switched another one of my clients and sent a recommendation to another agency to take all of their clients to do all their meta ads tracking on their brand's websites, on their Shopify stores via BILY, to do the best, most optimized pixel tracking available in meta ads. You should be going to BILY, BILY.ai. The link is in the show notes, of course, to get 100% server-side tracking for your meta ads. And here's the very clear value proposition. You will get the best data from your website back to Meta, for Meta to both report the most accurately in the dashboard and optimize as best as possible by being fed the most data back from you. How do I know that BILY gives you the most data for your pixel setup? Because I've tested it for many of my brands. Almost all of them at this point are on BILY, and it's because I've run head-to-head tests, BILY against other third-party tracking software, BILY against the standard Shopify Meta integration, and over again in the test, not only does BILY win at a head-to-head level of just the same exact campaign setup, you get more ROAS basically in your BILY campaigns, but on top of that, I have compared the event match quality, and you see the event match score be higher with BILY than other tools. On top of that, it is $1. It is $1 to start your first month with BILY, and in an ongoing way, it will be the most affordable option on the market for server-side tracking tools with full conversions, API integrations, all those things for your meta ads. Go check it out. It actually does a bunch more stuff than that. That's really, really cool. But go to BILY.ai to upgrade your meta ads tracking. It is what I'm recommending to everybody. It's what I'm using across the board. It is really, really awesome. It's also the most affordable tool in the market. There's really no reason you shouldn't be using it. If meta ads is a place you're spending a lot of money, go do it right now. I totally feel that. In fact, it is one of the things I have liked about using the tool as well, is that it will go to places that I don't go in my mind. And so I see what you mean. Like trying to find some way to use it for both is really good. You did talk about, though, the idea that you would want AI to break down. Maybe this is the chain of thought part of it, but also, or maybe just as you were talking about the tool in general, that you'd want me to train the AI. Tell me if I'm using that word wrong. On my own thinking in a way that would actually break down things into its component parts a little bit more, into the steps a little bit more. Can you sort of like talk more about that part of the process of working with AI and how to think about that?
Yeah, definitely. So this is a useful exercise for anyone in any business, I think, which is to take a process, take a workflow, break it down into its parts, into the key component parts, and figure out what the inputs and the outputs are of those different components, like those little different functions that produce your final desired output. And what that's going to do is, number one, I think it will help you find inefficiencies, and it will help you see what's very necessary. It will also help you see where AI best fits into those little component parts. So there might be one layer that is essential for a human. Like an obvious one is like presenting an idea to a client or something like that. I think we can all agree that we're not at the stage where we want AI presenting anything, and the human layer is important. But maybe creating the deck, you actually realize is possible, something you can do with AI, and then coming up with the ideas too. So I don't know, break it down into those component parts, and that's how I think about a software problem. And then figure out the best way that you can tie those together and relate those together, and see where the AI fits in. So what you're essentially doing in that is you're figuring out, what data do I need for each part? What's the best and cleanest way for me to figure out the inputs and outputs of those different parts? And how can I provide the maximum context to the AI in order to get me my final result? So if we go back to the review example, if you put everything in just a one process, like copy all the reviews, paste it in, and paste in a predefined prompt that you've decided, that you've engineered, it gets you a good result, you're limiting the ability to give full context to the AI. But if you break that down into, first I'm going to scrape my reviews, then I'm going to come up with my ideas. Now you're able to say, okay, what framework can I give the AI to think about those reviews? Can I break them down even more? Can I pull in additional information about my brand? And then can I do that, all of that? And now the actual output of the reviews, like its actual scraping understanding of the reviews, is going to be better. Now that's the input into your next step in the process, which is I'm coming up with my copy. And now, okay, can I go a step further and give it examples of previous copy, more information about the brand, and so on. And you've taken one step into two steps, you're getting a lot more data and context into the AI, and it's going to give you better results.
Yeah. Okay. That's helpful. Do you have, tell me more about what you are building then. Like if you take that and take it to the Jacob Posel level and the CTC level, what are you actually building at CTC that you can talk about publicly? And what is because I guess what that represents, whatever the answer to this question represents, is your bet on how AI is the most useful right now. I'm assuming you're thinking about this problem from a cost to impact ratio perspective, like what can make the biggest impact in the least amount of time, and how do I balance those things with all the potential things AI could do? So where is it taking you? What do you think the opportunity is?
So what we're working on is the creative strategy system. And I wouldn't necessarily say that is the highest ROI opportunity compared to like media buying or growth strategy or anything like that yet. I would say they're all very comparable. But creative strategy is something that is particularly slow. And we felt like particularly in need of disruption, because people are spending a ton of money on their creatives, and they're just not getting the outputs that they need. And it's a system that is kind of ripe for disruption for AI. So what we're doing is there's multiple different levels in the process and that we're building. So there's kind of a foundational, there's a foundational data layer that we're building for automated concepting, or automated briefing. So we're calling that the ultimate brief. And what that does is it pulls in multiple different data sources. So it gets all of your product, SKU, revenue and margin and inventory data. Scrapes all of your reviews and other demographic data. And it will also pull in like your sales to look at marketing moments and everything like that. And what it does is it produces this really nice brief that gives a lot of context around your brand.
Sorry, is it picking between different products? Like when you say it pulls in all that product level data, is it giving some suggestion about which products you should focus on next? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Okay. So based on inventory position and margin and probably SKU velocity or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So you can say a business goal. So you want to maximize top line revenue, you want to focus on highest margin, or you want to sell something that is in stock right now in inventory. So we will be able to kind of pull all that in, and we also relate a review to a specific product. So the more powerful thing that we can do is we can do this full workflow. We can say, I want to sell something that's my highest margin product. And then I want to see all the reasons why someone said they were buying that specific product through my reviews. And I want to see the exact persona that I identified, or the exact audience that I identified as the person who was buying it. So I can look at what my product was, what my offer is, who was buying it, and why they're buying it. And all of that to create these briefs and create those concepts.
And so then it's going, so you set the business goal, it gives you the product suggestion. And when it gives you the product suggestion, it gives you the briefs as well, like the ad briefs.
Yeah. So when we think about concepts as like an offer, an audience, and an angle, it automates that entire process. And it can also look in the seasonal element of your brand, like where you are. And this is another reason why AI is powerful, because it has that intuition. So you know around the time of year you're in, how that relates to your previous year's revenue graph. Is there a marketing moment you can take advantage of, and how does that relate to your concepts?
So, okay, that's really interesting. So it's going to then give you the place to start for all of that is, that's very fascinating. And what you're describing there is a really good indication of this, because I've talked to Taylor plenty of times. I've probably done episodes about this. He's done episodes about this, about how to pick which product to advertise next. And it's weighing this combination of inventory position, goals, value to the brand. And all you're doing there is saying that there is a rubric that's happening in our minds here. Mm-hmm. So why would I try to go think through that rubric with my very limited capacity, and instead have AI go perfectly execute my rubric, And I'm assuming what will happen there is that you'll end up in some spaces where it will not do exactly what you want it to do, and you'll have to figure out where it went wrong and sort of keep problem solving that. Like I could imagine. But I mean, that's of course going to happen with humans too. And probably at a lower error rate with AI,
I mean, and even the volume game kind of evens it out eventually. But it's like, can we expect a creative strategist to have to be considering all of the product sales data and inventory data for every single SKU? Like, imagine if you're a complex brand, like an apparel brand, it's just not fair for people to be considering all of that at once. And then also having to consider why people are buying it and who's buying it, and then having to do that like 100 times a month. Like it's too much for a human brain to comprehend at scale, because that's one brand. So now you have to do it across multiple brands. So it's a very difficult thing to do, but it's something that's super easy and super well suited to AI. So it fits in really well, and the results are really, really cool too.
Man, I'm getting so many questions these days about campaign setups and things like that, especially when you talk about the ad volume that's possible when you do something like what Jacob is talking about in this episode, where you're really outputting a huge amount of stuff with tools like AI and just in general building your ad account for huge volume. There is no better place to learn about how to build your ad account with financially driven targets, and the best in current ad buying tactics on meta ads than Admission from Common Thread Collective. And if you go through the link in my show notes to sign up for Admission, you will get a free coaching call with their team of real experts. So if you are tempted right now to email me or to DM me and say, Andrew, how should I build my setup? What I'm going to do is tell you, I don't have time to look at your exact setup, but I know who does and who can do a great job giving you structured course type content through Admission, like the very best in D2C growth principles flowing down from the mind of Taylor Holiday into courses that are structured for you to get exactly what you need out of them. Ongoing community with other operators like you who are trying to get the best out of their growth tactics and are in Admission with you, and all kinds of different sized businesses, including 8-figure businesses are in that community, like people to really learn from. And then coaching for $150 an hour, you can get access to CTC's incredible team of media buyers who are deeply experienced in manual bid media buying. And you actually get the first one of those for free if you sign up for 3 months of Admission, or you can get 4 of them for free if you sign up for a year in advance. And there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. Look, if you're trying to level up your DTC growth game and your meta ads game, there's no better solution. There's no better solution. The best information available and the best help available is available to you through Admission. The link for that is in the show notes. You got to go through there if you want that free call, or you got to tell them that I sent you to get that free call, free coaching call, or those 4 free coaching calls. So go to the link in my show notes, go to Admission, get the help you need. What part of that process could I do? I can't build that, I don't think. But what could I build with the tools where they're at now?
You could get access. You could create a more manual version of this that you're able to use. So you could export your product sales data from Shopify. You wouldn't have to use the API, and you can paste it into whatever BI tool you want to use, or Google Sheets, for example, and you could order it. You could probably do an element of the review scraping data that we use. I think that we could come up with frameworks to make it efficient and work well for you. It wouldn't be entirely
Sure.
automated, and it wouldn't be the same level of detail. But if you thought about very specific frameworks that you want your AI to think about your reviews in, and broke them down more into chunks or bulk, and then pasted them in, and then got the results and compared those, that might be a way that you could more easily, that you could get more value out of your reviews.
Yeah.
I would then make sure that you keep the product IDs associated with the reviews, because most reviews data, they'll give you that. And then you can paste it into ChatGPT and ask it to join your product sales table to your review table. So now you've join those together and you have a relationship there. And you could probably graph that data and get an insight into your marketing calendar that way too. So you could create you yourself with a bit of hard work could create like a semi-automated, a little bit more manual version of this. I think it would be the final output, which would be hard for you to automate, which is automating the process of concepts and briefs and everything like that.
Have you outputted these briefs yet?
We've outputted specific concepts, but there's a whole other part of this that we haven't even spoken about, which is where a huge amount of my time has gone into, which is automating actually creating the ads themselves.
Yeah.
Which might be interesting to talk to. So
yeah. Well, let's do the briefs for a second, and then let's go there.
Mm-hmm.
So, are the briefs that you're getting out of this so far good?
Yeah, they're good. I think that they are as good as any human could make.
Yeah.
And a lot more efficient to get there.
Sure. When I hear about this process, what it makes me really think is I'm not going to go try to build this. I'm just going to buy it when you guys produce it at scale. I mean, I know right now the plan is probably to keep it. I mean, I have no idea what the plans for the thing is, but that it just feels like the actual move here is that there's a Shopify app that plugs into my store, grabs all that information for me, communicates with my review software directly, and I just pay, $70 billion a month for it because it's so valuable. And I'm going to be really fascinated if you get there, especially if it gets to the level where you're also plugging in AI avatars and stuff like that, all the way down to the ad level, whatever. So that's interesting.
what we're building. So what we're building
Well, Jacob, convince me that that's not the way I should think about this. Why don't I stop all of my AI investment right now? Keep making things the way I do as good of a job as possible, making things there are, and then just wait for you or for somebody else to produce this as a public product, and for the cost of that to go down over time because there's 5 competitive versions of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to convince you that's not the right approach right now.
Yeah.
I will say that with the space that I'm in right now is a lot of people forget that someone actually has to be the one responsible for building that. Someone has to be the person who takes it to the next level. And I think that that's where I am, kind of that's where I want to be. And that's where CTC is investing to be.
Sure.
If I were to play devil's advocate on why it might not get there, is because the technology may not progress significantly enough into the future where it's able to, with no human intervention or with like in a very automatable way, understand your business and work within the constraints of your business in the way that you want it to. When you have a human integrating it and someone like a specialist implementing it directly into your business, then you know it's going to work really well for you. And that extra investment might make sense to certain people. It might not make sense to certain people. I'm sure there's going to be a SaaS version of this eventually. I'm not too interested in being the one that creates the Shopify app version of this because it will go from $500 a month to $10 a month really quickly. But
yeah. I mean, I actually think it'll start at $3,000 a month or something like that, if not more, maybe 5,000, right? Because what you're talking about here is replacing employees, right? So it's just like, I think it would be extremely expensive at first, but over time it would get undercut on the price because what would happen at first is that the market you'd be competing with would be humans and they're expensive. And so that would be what people anchored the price to, but then eventually there'd be competitors. And so then then the market, it'll increase the supply side on it. But I mean, I think there's a thing here that's sort of a fascinating conversation. It makes me want to go talk to Taylor about how he's envisioning this because, anyway, let's go to the thing you brought up because I think it is an interesting topic. Because you just talked about saving a lot on creative strategy costs and time.
Yeah.
But now you're talking about actually making the ads themselves, which is a different area, which is all the money that goes into actual creative production costs. So talk to me about what you're doing there and
so we haven't spoken about this publicly yet, the actual tool that we're building. But I think it's fun to talk about and it's fun to talk about. We've done some demos and some beta testing. So we are building the AI co-pilot for you to make ads. People have been talking a lot about what coders have right now with Cursor and GitHub Copilot and stuff like that. Think of what we're building as the creative production version of that. So it's embedded directly into the image editing softwares that people actually use, the same way that Cursor is like a fork of VS Code, for example, to the software engineers out there. So for example, a plugin in Figma or directly into the Canva API. And what we do is we make it really easy for you to make ads very quickly and at scale. So you have an AI backend which has scraped your entire brand presence online. So your store, your Instagram, it's gotten all your copy, all of your different images, your brand colors, your brand fonts, and everything like that. It's then loaded directly into, let's just talk about like a Figma plugin. So you're able to access a Figma plugin, and the Figma, you can set up your Figma in a way that you can make bulk changes to all your different ads that you've previously made. So think about like selecting an image, and that image goes across all of your different ads, and then copy, and then that change is made across all of your different ads, and so on. And what we've seen is that with this workflow and with this process, you are able to create ads very, very quickly, reliably, and also high quality. So that's like the kind of main.
So you guys are actually already doing this.
Yep.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. So that's like kind of the main foundation of it, which we've had a lot of success with. The next part of it, the cool part, is that is automating kind of creative production, like the actual photography, the videography, stuff like that, using AI, which we've also seen a lot of success with. People might be surprised about. But what we're able to do is we're able to take people's products, take their brands, and train AI models to enhance the current asset library that they have. So we do integrate with your Instagram and with your Dropbox and everything like that. But then we can also enhance your image library by making you theoretically infinite images in any location, anything with your product, and feed those directly into your ads too.
Yeah, that is wild. I mean, that's interesting. Like right before we started talking, Taylor and I were going back and forth. I put on Twitter that in the last 30 days, and I actually just recorded an episode about this. In the last 30 days, my team had created close to 3,500 ads across a portfolio of about 5 clients. And that's really good for us, right? That's by far the fastest we've ever made. That includes, that's of course not all 3,500. It's not 3,500 concepts. It's variations and format changes and all that stuff. So it's a little inflated, but you get the idea. And that is great for us. We've gotten the cost per ad down pretty low. I think the quality is pretty high. It's working in the ad account. We're running through manual bids. It works well. But I as I was reflecting on that, like what I'm learning from that process is like, if we can keep building process to unkink anywhere where there is sort of unnecessary manual labor, it will really help. And there'll be more leverage. And I think I'll be very fascinated to see what the availability of a tool like that is, because I think there's just this world where we end up being able to massively increase that volume more. And therefore, my actual next investment, the way that I think about where to put my time next, is really actually on the quality side in some ways. Because I think if you can create a Figma plugin that does that and I can pay for access to it or whatever, I actually don't really need to make a bigger investment at this point into the volume side. Other people are going to make that investment for me and then sell it to me, or there's going to be some kinds of tools that, Figma at some point is going to do this kind of thing themselves, right? They're just going to like introduce a way to make it more valuable with their Figma Copilot or whatever. But so for me, it becomes now this like prompting thing. Like, how do I make sure that the outputs that I get are as good as possible, so that not only can I increase my output, but like the way I was thinking about it is like, if I have a 20% hit rate on my ads right now, and I have no idea if that's the right number, I'm just making that number up. Okay. If I have a 20% hit rate right now, but I can turn that into 25 and I can 5X my output, like it is a real leverage multiplier. And so if I can do both at the same time, it's really crazy. And I think I'm better positioned to try to sort through the quality output than the quantity output. I think you're better positioned to work on the quantity output and then to make sure that the quality is happening. And there's people looking at that, who've spent their whole life on creative strategy and stuff like that, but that's the way that I'm sort of thinking about how those two things will come together. And the AI part on my side of things then is to actually use AI to help me with the work of figuring out what makes a quality ad, essentially for me to start trying to use the tools to analyze, like, why did this ad work? What did I do here when I wrote this structure of an ad? And I do have some like pre-built structures like that, some formats. If I have this structure of an ad, how does that make it into, and how do I write, like I said, hooks and body and whatever section of the ad? How do I actually then plug that into the tool that then creates the massive amount of output, So anyway, I don't know what you think of that, but that's my immediate reaction to you telling me that.
Yeah, that's why we're not just building the AI tool, we're also building the data infrastructure underneath that leads to that creates the concepts at a better scale and that's a data-driven decision, right? It's like, yeah, you can make 1,000 ads, but are all the products in those ads in stock? Like, are they all actually products you want to be selling? Like, does it make sense for your business? So that's why that data infrastructure underneath is very important. And then there will be a whole monitoring and review process that goes on too. So we know who the angle and what the angle was and who the audience was that was intended for that product. Like, how we can monitor and see how does that perform? Are they performing well is a certain audience performing well responding well to a certain angle? Like, does it make sense? Should we double down on that, or should we explore new things? So yeah, I think that what you're saying makes sense, but I think the AI and software itself can get further than what people might expect, as long as, and it kind of comes back to the whole point and the whole big picture, which is, are you giving it access to the data that it needs in the context that it needs to make that decision? And if so, then yeah, it gets very powerful.
Okay, I have a lot of other questions and a lot of other thoughts, and maybe we'll have to do another follow-up sometime. But before I do, you are spending your life thinking about AI right now and ads and those kinds of things. Tell me more, or just let me just give you a second. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you think is really important to say that would be helpful for people? Anything like that? And if not, that's okay. But I just want to make sure you have a chance to take the conversation anywhere you want to take it before we close.
I mean, how I usually think about these things is that people need to be playing with it, and they need to see how far they can get. But I do think a really important message right now is that if you're not getting the result that you want out of it and you don't think that it's useful, there's a very good chance that's because you just don't know how to use it properly, and you're just not giving it the data and you're not giving it the context it needs. Yeah. And that's the reason why it's not producing a strong result for you. And there's probably, I would say, in most cases, especially even beyond creative strategy, like that's just one element of an e-commerce business, where there's a very high ROI implementation that you could use that makes a lot of sense for your business, and it's probably worth exploring. And like, not to introduce any FOMO or anything like that, but I believe that the people who jump on it early and who adopt it early will have exponential benefits in the future, because they'll be well positioned and set up to adopt new changes, and they'll overtake the competition. Especially if you're a business that relies very heavily on humans. Like, it's not easy to unwind or to change a business that relies very heavily on humans. Like, that's a big ship that you have to turn. But if you start integrating technology and AI into your business early, and you're well positioned to take advantage of any changes, then you'll probably be very well positioned in the future. And I think you'll benefit exponentially from that. So if I was someone right now who was running a business heavy on human labor, like e-commerce or agency or something like that, I would be thinking very deeply, and it would be top of my mind on how I can integrate these things.
Yeah. I mean, what you just spoke to is exactly what I tried to say in the last podcast episode. Is I'm almost certain that part of the reason this isn't doing for me all the things that I want is because I'm doing it wrong. And the way I've continued to conceptualize AI is just that it's a tool. Tools create leverage, but they only create as much leverage as you are good at wielding them, right? It's like there's a lot of really good quality tools out there for, let's say, woodworking, that I can create zero leverage with because I have no idea how to do woodworking, and so, like, I mean, I've honestly thought about like a hammer. Like, you watch good construction workers with a hammer, and though the use of a hammer is, I'm much better at pounding a nail with a hammer than with not having a hammer, and I'm better at pounding a nail with a hammer than with like a mason jar, right, or something like that. If I was trying to use something else to create some leverage on it, right, the hammer works better than that. But people who are really like professional construction workers are way better at using hammers than me. They pound the nail in one shot every time. They hit it right in the middle of the head, and so it creates way more leverage for them than it does for me. And that's the way I've kind of conceptualized this. It's just like I'm just not that good at swinging the hammer yet, and I got to get better at it. So anyway, thanks for helping me to do that, Jacob, in this episode. And I'm sure this will be useful to others. I'm certain there will be people watching this who will want to follow up with you. You should do that at DTC Jacob on Twitter. I know you've been sharing some stuff that you've been learning, and Taylor's been promoting some of that as well, and what you guys are producing. I'm also sure some people are going to hear this and go, I need to go work with Common Thread Collective. You're right. You should go do that. And they are unparalleled, I think, in what they are creating in the e-commerce space. So if you would like to do that, follow up with me. It's probably the easiest, and I'll make an intro to the right person. There's a few different parts of the organization, and happy to do that. Podcast at ajfgrowth.com. Happy to make an intro. Again, depending on sort of where your business is at and who you should be talking to and what part of the organization you should go into. So that's that. Any last things, Jacob? Anything else that you want to say before we sign off here?
No, just thank you for having me on. It was a lot of fun. I love talking about AI, and I'm happy to talk about AI with anyone in the e-commerce space or beyond.
Yeah. All right. My pleasure, man. Thanks again. Holy cow, the future is going to be crazy. This is going to be absolutely nuts where this is all going. What that conversation with Jacob just opened my eyes to a whole bunch more places that are just not that far away. Even if you're not getting all the access to it right now yourself, like Jacob talked about, there's just a lot that can be done. If you would like to follow up with Jacob, do that at DTC Jacob on Twitter. He's a really super smart and compelling guy, as you heard, and loves to hear from people. So go do that. Link for that, of course, is in the show notes. And then you can also reach out to me at Andrew J. Ferris. Don't forget to follow up with my sponsors for this episode, including BILY and Admission. They're both awesome. And you can reach out to me, podcast@ajfgrowth.com, and find out everything else I'm doing at ajfgrowth.com. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. I've got more really, really good episodes coming up, including a whole episode dedicated to international ad buying on Meta Ads, which is something I've basically never talked about on this show, but I'm going to bring you a full approach to how to set up international advertising. It's going to be really helpful. Ash Milwani from Obvi. So don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss that. Talk to you next time.